welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. Very excited about the topic today. If you see all these lovely people here on the side of the screen, please come join us. I stream on Twitch pretty much every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you're ever bored around that time, please feel free to join us. It's a great time. We would love to have you. Today we are going to be talking about an article that I was sent. And the title of the article is there a single comedian out there who isn't fat phobic, apart from me, of course, right? And this is an article that was written by Sofie Hagen, who is a comedian and who is also a fat woman. And she she talks a lot about health at every size and about, you know, being fat and about what it's like to be fat. And so this is the article right here. So this is the article, and by Sofie Hagen. It says, I'm not saying that all my peers set out to make fun of fat people, but that doesn't make their shows safe spaces. So just to kind of show you guys, like to give you guys a little bit more context, I want to show you this video right here, which is Sofie Hagen, How I Learned to Love Being Fat by ITV News. And the reason I wanted to show you this was because, one, I feel like it's always good to kind of put a face to these types of articles, but also I think that it is important to humanize people that we are talking about, because it's very easy for me to bring up an article and say, wow, this is really stupid, I disagree, this person's an idiot, what a dummy, stuff like that. And I just feel like that's not really conducive to any sort of actual conversation. And so I want to share, you know, a very real, and it seems like a very real and, you know, normal type of video. I don't think there's anything over the top here, which hopefully will humanize this person. But again, just because, you know, I can humanize someone doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with everything they say. But this is the video in question right here.
I used to do really self-deprecating comedy. And I remember doing a show in Denmark. I said, I love my body, and then they laughed as if that was a joke. There's no punchline. I love my body is just a statement, but yet because you think that thought is so ridiculous, that suddenly become the punchline. I remember thinking, wow, I've come a long way. Hi, I'm Sofie Hagen.
I think that's really interesting, because, I mean, if you are someone that enjoys watching stand-up comedy and you see someone that is overweight, let's be honest, you can almost guarantee a good amount of their comedy is going to be based on the fact that they are overweight, right? Which this is something that we will get into in this article and stuff as well. But I think that is interesting, right? Is it right? Is it wrong? Again, we'll get into it later.
And this is how I learned to love being fat. I was probably quite happy with my body when I was a child, up until the age of 8, when the school nurse suggested that I was going to be put on a diet. Every single adult around me agreed that I should not be fat, which, looking back, was weird. I just looked like a kid, where my body used to be this vehicle, you know, like a nice thing that would carry me around, that would let me play with the other kids, was suddenly wrong and bad and dangerous and unattractive and all of these.
I think this is something that a lot of us can relate to, right? I think a lot of us have struggled with our weight, like especially those of us that have struggled with our weight for the majority of our lives. We have been told that we're chubby, we're husky, we're fat, you need to lose weight at a really, really young age. And I can say almost unequivocally that usually doesn't help. You know, like making a kid really aware of the fact that they are fat or that they are overweight, I don't think it really helps. I think, again, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't address the fact that there are, you know, especially in America, child obesity is such a big issue. But I think that just being like, hey, kid, you're fat, you need to lose weight, clearly that's not working. But again, that just because something isn't working and I don't think it's the best option doesn't mean that we should just put our head in the sand and be like, kids can be fat and it's fine, right? It's a hard situation, right?
This shameful feeling. I'm 8 years old and I'm probably wrong, and this whole thing happening in this area is repulsive and should be changed. I didn't really live for a decade of my life because I was just waiting for that one day when I would be acceptable enough to kind of be alive. I don't have any photos of myself between the age of 10 and maybe 20. I didn't see that it was in any way helpful to take a photo of myself because, you know, I'm gonna be thin one day and then we'll take all the photos when I'm thin. The only images I have is like me meeting Westlife because I was a huge fan of Westlife, so I was like, okay, I'll have a photo, but it's mainly because of this hot boy band member.
So I can definitely understand that feeling of, you know, not wanting to take photos and feeling like you're some stuff that I've said before, right, in my videos is I was living instead of existing. And I don't necessarily think that me saying that is problematic. Like, I don't feel, because that was how I felt. But if I'm being completely honest, and I'm not trying to compare, oh, she's not a big, but like the difference in size here, I was really, really big, to a point where my size was affecting my life to where I could not do a lot of things that I wanted to do. Not just because I didn't want photos to be taken of me, or I didn't want to take photos, or I didn't want to do things. It wasn't I didn't want to, it was I physically couldn't, right? And there's a big difference there. Again, I'm not saying she's right or wrong. I just am pointing out that there are people that are in positions that maybe would feel similar ways, but their weight isn't just making them uncomfortable doing certain things. It's making certain things literally impossible for them. And even if it's just making something uncomfortable for you and you decide to lose weight because of that, I don't think that that's a bad thing and you should feel shame for that. If that doesn't motivate you to change, again, everyone's different and they're allowed to feel however they feel. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
Whenever I would get abuse in the street or in any kind of public space, it would kill me inside. I would be so sad. And the most recent one was a few weeks ago. Two guys kind of bumped into me and one of them said, "Ew, I touched it." It strengthens this voice in your head that's constantly going, "You are worthless, you are nothing, you don't deserve to be here." I was in my early 20s when I realized how...
I mean, clearly, I don't think I really have to say anything about that. That's just really crappy that someone would do that. Like, people, that's just wrong, right? It's just wrong.
How little I was alive. It shook me into existence in a way. And I started doing all of the things that I thought I should have to be thin to do. I'm doing comedy, I've written a book, I'm living in another country, I'm going to the parties, I'm eating the burgers, and I'm just having an amazing time. In my book, I interviewed a few people to kind of get other perspectives. There's intersection between all of these ways that we try to silence and make people feel ashamed of various things about their identity or their bodies. What worked for me was realizing that fat equal bad is not a fact. It's mainly an opinion that a lot of corporations have made us think is true. And all I would love for people to do is question that. Why do you think this? Who's making money off of you thinking this? And is that fair? Is it fair that you're marginalizing a huge group of people, pun intended, because someone wants to make money off of you?
So that's the video that I wanted to show you, again, just to kind of so you guys can understand who this person is, where they're coming from. But this is the article right here, and I just want to go through and read it. So again, I was spying anonymously in a Facebook fan group for a well-known comedy podcast when I saw a post alleging that a popular feminist comedian was making really offensive fat jokes as part of her show. It was a warning to others, advising them not to go and see the show. The author also asked the group if anyone could recommend comedians who don't do fat jokes. Now, personally for this, I don't really have much of an issue. I mean, I think if hearing a fat joke really affects you that much, I don't think that there's anything wrong with trying to avoid fat jokes at all. Where I have an issue is that people claiming that telling a fat joke is inherently fat phobic, or making fun of yourself if you're a fat comedian, right? Which a lot of fat comedians, they make fun of themselves, makes them fat phobic. I just don't agree. I just don't agree with that, right? I personally, but we'll keep reading. I started thinking, who would I recommend, apart from myself, of course, but if I recommend myself too many times in the group, they'll start to realize that it's me behind the fake name. A fat joke is a joke about fat people where fat people are the punchline. It's when a thin actor dresses up in a fat suit to mock fat people. I think that this is something that used to be a lot more popular, right? They bring up Fat Monica from Friends, but like this was a thing that was a lot more popular. You don't see it as much because I think that some people, again, I think people have an issue if the person isn't a fat person telling the joke, it feels a little wrong. And I don't know how to explain that, but if a fat person is making a joke about themselves, I think that like, I'm sorry. I never had an issue with it when I was bigger. I don't have an issue with it now. I don't think it's a terrible thing. I don't think that makes them fat phobic. I think that makes them using material that they have dealt with in their life, because usually the reason stuff is funny is because there is a hint of like pain behind it, right? So it's like people that have had the hardest lives are usually the funniest, right? So it's like they're using this thing that people have made fun of them for. And I think what's so cool about fat jokes and fat comedians is that they're able to flip it, and they're actually able to help a lot of people. Like, it helped me a lot being able to use my weight as a way to, like, you know, just joke around. I don't know. Okay. So, such as in Friends, when we see young Monica, aka Fat Monica, it's the comedian who said that the only competitive sport fat people should ever participate in is a pie eating contest. I once heard a comedian tell a joke that fat people can only ever get laid after meeting someone in a nightclub if it's past 3 a.m. because, you know, then maybe people would be drunk enough to have sex with them. I had slept with this very comedian 6 months before, both of us very sober. Again, like, I understand being upset. I don't know who the comedian is, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a fat comedian that was telling a joke and the punchline was basically themselves. You know, I don't know, but like, I feel like it's a very different thing between just like, say, like a skinny comedian or a regular size comedian or whatever, right? Like, telling a joke like that versus someone that is overweight and they're like making fun of themselves. You know what I mean? And like, I don't know, like that wouldn't put a bad taste in my mouth at all. But I think, yes, a comedian that went on stage that wasn't overweight, that just like their whole routine was making fun of fat people, then yeah, I'd be like, that's kind of like, okay, like that's a little weird. As with all jokes that rely on boring stereotypes, there are no new ideas or angles. We eat too much. We don't exercise. We are unintelligent, desperate, and lazy. I don't know where the unintelligent, desperate part comes in. Lazy, maybe. I've dealt with that one, but it just, I don't know. That just seems like kind of thrown in there, in my opinion. Coming up with fat jokes is the easiest thing in the world. I will agree that it's definitely easy. If you are a fat comedian, like I said before, that is probably the easiest comedy to write, right? As a fat comedian, to write fat jokes. I would agree with that. I think it would be very hard as a not fat comedian to write a bunch of fat jokes that people weren't upset by. That would be very difficult. But that's not what this is about. I just think that would be a little bit more difficult. Because that was all I did when I first started out in comedy. So my jokes were exclusively about how much I ate, how I never did exercise, how wobbly my stomach was. What I was really saying was, don't worry, I know it's not okay that it looked like this. I'm not here to challenge the status quo. Then we could all relax. Well, I think like, I don't think that it's so when someone's going to a comedy show, they're there to laugh. And a lot of times that laugh at very simple, sometimes very stupid. There's so many comedians, right? Sometimes very crude. Like, most people aren't going there for high level ideas and like talk about, I'm sorry, but like talk about social justice and talk about marginalized groups and talk like, but I'm sorry, but most people aren't going to comedy shows for that. Like, there are times and places for that stuff, and I'm not against it at all, clearly, right? I'm not. But if you are going to a comedy show, probably that's not the time that you want to be thinking about these things, right? So, when I educated myself on body positivity and fat acceptance movement, I started seeing myself as worthy of being alive, which is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. More power to you. I'm happy for you, right? And when I stopped seeing fatness as an inherently bad thing, I stopped doing those jokes. I did not and still do not wish to harm people with my material. I think at the end of the day, regardless, there is always going to be some people, unless your comedy is the most washed and clean, like literally the most boring is the best word I can think about it, comedy, you are going to offend people. Like, I remember, this is super random, but I used to go to church a lot, and one day they brought a Christian comedian to the church to tell jokes. And I'm sorry, but it was so bad. It was so bad. And the one joke that was actually kind of funny made so many people mad. It was like someone, he was talking to the audience, right? And he was like, oh, what do you do? That type of thing, right? And the person said, oh, I'm a dancer. And so the comedian, he had a, like a microphone stand, and he said, all right, show me what you got, right? It was I thought it was pretty funny. It was like the funniest thing that happened in the entire comedy show, right? But oh my God, it was so awkward. It was so awkward, dude. Like, it was just like, why? Why are you making us sit through this? Please stop this, right? That's kind of a tangent. But okay. I also realized that comedians who do make fat jokes never actually address the fat people in the audience. We will happily say, the woman in the audience, or is there anyone from Ireland, to acknowledge the presence of the group we are about to mock, but never when it is about fat people. It's those fat people. They are like this and they are like that. Fat people are never expected to be in the room. I don't know for sure. Obviously, I've been to a few comedy shows. I haven't been to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. I would assume that you're not intentionally trying to hurt a specific person's feelings, right? So like, it would be kind of messed up to be like, all right, see that fatty in the front row? This is about you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like, yeah, of course. Why would you do that? That's just a kind of, I don't think it's necessary, because I'm not trying to be mean, but like, if someone is fat, you can see that they are fat. But if they're from Ireland, you can't, like, unless for some reason they're wearing, like, I don't know, an Irish flag get up or something, like, you wouldn't know for sure, right? I don't know. That's just kind of off the top of my head. Okay. It's one thing hearing a person with a microphone making a joke that dehumanizes you. Again, I just feel like that's too, like, I understand if a joke, you don't like a joke, but like going to where, like, telling a fat joke, like, especially if it's an overweight comedian that is telling a joke about themselves and they're like making fun of themselves, for you to feel dehumanized by that, and you're also a comedian, like, I don't know, man, like, that maybe maybe you shouldn't be doing this because, like, if that's how you feel, I don't know, man. Okay. But it's another thing to hear 400 people around you laugh at it. So I've been trying to come up with the name of a single comedian I would fully trust not to make fat jokes. There are plenty I would trust not to do it intentionally. There are those I am 95% certain wouldn't do it, but I never watch a comedy show without expecting something fatphobic to come up. The comedian might not even mock fat people directly, but they might announce that they have lost weight and the audience cheers. Good on you for not being as fat. Again, this is just kind of, I think, projecting, right? Like, if someone is announcing that they've lost weight to an audience, people as humans that are well adjusted, that have been around other people, are going to see that as, hey, I did this thing that I was working towards. And so it's almost just the polite thing to do to be like, oh, nice, good job, right? It's like when comedians are like, yeah, I just had a kid, and people clap, right? And then a lot of times they're like, why are you clapping? I didn't do anything, or something like that, right? It's like, a lot of times it's they expect the response to almost set up another joke. It's just like to be upset about something so small, it just, I don't know. It seems like you're trying to find something to be mad about. Like in that video we watched previously where you said that person bumped into you and said, oh, I touched it. That's messed up and that's wrong and that's disgusting and like that's ridiculous, right? But this, I'm sorry, is just nowhere near the same level. Okay, I love most comedians and I respect anyone who attempts stand-up as a career, as it is an incredibly weird job that can get really lonely. We need each other, which is why it sucks that even some of my heroes have internalized fat phobia. It makes it hard not to feel very, very tired and unwelcome. I am proud when fat people say they feel safe in my audience. Would I also like to be told that I am the funniest comedian in the whole world? The sexiest and smartest and prettiest? Sure, but I have to assume that's implicit. For now, I'm happy to just see myself recommended in Facebook groups where they don't know I'm watching as the comedian whose show it is safe to go as a fat person. And so that's the whole shebang right there. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. But I just wanted to share this article because I think it's really interesting. Like a lot of times when I go over this stuff, I just really like having these conversations because I have these things that I disagree with, but then I have these things that I do agree with. And so it's kind of, I don't know, it's always just fun to kind of get these conversations started. So I would love to know what y'all think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.